Good afternoon, good evening almost. My name's Kevin McNelis. I've been friends with Kevin Grace for, I don't know, a long, long time. Um, we kind of found each other when he was given a tour at Old Pimlico, and I mentioned that I collected Pimlico items. And so from that day on, we've been kind of keeping in touch with each other quite a bit. Kevin asked if he could come out and do a blog because he knew I have what I consider to be one of the best collection of Preakness stuff and in the world, I guess, because people beyond Maryland probably don't really collect it very much. But in addition to Pimlico and Preakness, I've been collecting horse racing stuff for 45 years now. And Kevin's helped me get some really great things. But he asked me to talk about a few things, and one of the things I think we'll just start with is the cornerstone or the pride of my collection, which is I have 102 different Preakness programs that I've been collecting, like I say, for 45 years. So he's going to show you now the some of these programs, and I'll talk a little bit about what they're all about, because nowhere on earth is there this many Preakness programs assembled in one location, and I myself haven't seen them assembled together except today. I've had them in boxes and places over the last few years. Anyway, this is 102 different Preakness programs, and I go from like 1922 all the way up, mostly continuous, missing 2 or 3 of the ones from the 20s. But I've recently found this program here, which is an 1889 program. It said it was found in a black jockey's locker room that was unearthed several years ago, and they found several old programs in it. And it was only a 2-horse race, and Budapest won the race in 1889. So that's the oldest Preakness program known to exist. Preakness began in 1873, but finding any programs from the 1800s is pretty unique. I also found, and most of these things I found on eBay, I found a program from 1898 when it was run not in Baltimore but up in the Brooklyn Jockey Club. So for about a dozen years in the late 1800s, it was run outside of Pimlico.
At Gravesend and Jerome.
That's right, Gravesend and Jerome Park. I'll go through some of the programs in a minute, but I want to show you one other thing that I found, and this is possibly the oldest piece of Pimlico memorabilia known to exist. It's an 1871 Maryland State Fair program. It says it was the 3rd annual State Fair to be held at Pimlico. And inside, there's a picture of a horse on the back. It's in really rough condition, but inside there's horse races that says $200 to the winner. It just lists 2 or 3 races. So that's an actual racing program from Pimlico from 1871. But if you look at the programs starting beyond the 1800s, you'll see how the style of the program has changed. And people say, where do you get these programs? But I've gone anywhere I could to find one I don't have. And some of them have cost me a pretty penny, but because I collect so many things, I'm able to trade and basically haven't really gone broke collecting these things. It's just the amount of time I spend looking for them has resulted in me being able to find so many. And I'll write letters. I'll get a program from somebody. I'll say, do you have this year or do you have that year? And sometimes that's resulted in 1 or 2 I've been missing. If you keep going up, some of my programs more recently, my first Preakness I ever went to was in 1980. I went to Virginia Tech, and I graduated in 1979. Problem with Virginia Tech is they were a trimester school, so they never got out to the end of May. So I always missed the Preakness. I was always in school for the Preakness. So in 1980, all my friends and I went to the infield and drank a couple beers, and that's kind of the day my collecting began. I picked up the first glass, a 1980 glass, and then 2 or 3 years later, I kept picking up the glass, and I realized I had started a collection. And then one day I found one from 1978, and I just started collecting. And then one day I found a Derby glass from 1949, and I said, oh my gosh, the Derby too. So while I have an incredible Preakness collection, I also have been collecting Kentucky Derby and Belmont items for nearly 45 years. And that includes the glasses, the pins, the tickets. But back to the programs a little bit. Some of them I've had signed in 1978 when Affirmed won the Preakness. A friend of mine was good friends with Steve Coffin, and he said to Kevin, Maryland's most famous racing collector, and signed that for me. My 1973 program, going back a little bit, when Secretariat won the Preakness. Now I won't open it here, but there was, on the 25th anniversary of Secretariat winning the Preakness, there was a signing by Ron Turcotte and Penny Tweedy down at Pimlico. So we went down to Pimlico, me and my kids. There were 3 kids, my wife and I. So there were 5 of us. There was a 6-horse race coming up. We all bet $2 on each different horse. So we bet on 5 of the 6 horses. The 6th horse won. So we didn't win anything. But I got in line while they were betting on the race and watching the race. And I met Penny Tweedy and Ron Turcotte. And I opened up the program and they signed it for me. And I realized that Lucian Lauren, the trainer's program, trainer signature, was also in the program. So that's one of the only programs known to exist that has all 3, owner, trainer, and jockey, and its Secretariat, who's kind of the most desirable of all the programs or collectibles of recent times. And then I have other ones signed by, once I got them signed by all the jockeys, because a friend of mine was able to get inside the jockey room before the Preakness race and get it signed. And another time, Javier Castellano signed it for me, and then he just happened to be outside, and I saw him, and I got him to sign it. And later on, he won the race. I think it was Bernardini he won the race on, and I happen to have his signature on Bernardini in that program. And then Kevin has gotten me some great signatures downstairs. And Kevin, having the name Kevin and working a licensing office, he was able to get, I think I've got 23 different Preakness winners, trainers, and jockeys on a single cloth that say to Kevin. So to Kevin, but really to Kevin Grace, but to Kevin McNelis. So I have, I just really do have a great collection, and Kevin's helping get a lot of it. So that's the programs, and each year they got bigger and bigger. So it got to the point where I used to frame them on the walls, but I ran out of wall space, so I've just got them inventoried and cataloged at this point. And also, I have almost all of the tickets, as Kevin will show you. Well, not all of them. I have 102 Preakness programs, but I think I have 55 different Preakness tickets going back. And I pulled some other things out. The Preakness VIP tickets, not tickets, but patches that they would give out to the rich and famous. And then back in one of these 1907, 1909, some of these are member badges that you would take into the Preakness. So I love that stuff from the early 1900s. Really, really, really hard to find. And there's a picture of Pimlico from, I believe, early 1900s. And I have older ones. I have boxes of things. And then finally, and I'll kind of end on this with regard to the programs. If you look closely, this is a racing manual. It's not a Preakness program. But down in the lower corner, it actually shows Preakness running the Pimlico Stakes in a walk-off. He was the only horse in the race. But this is an actual, they're actually talking about the horse Preakness, after which the Preakness Stakes was named. So that's some of my older things. And in a little bit, I'll show you just some odd extra other things that I happen to have. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about some of my different things today from my collection. Right here is the 1939, all 4 horseshoes from the horse Chaladon. And Chaladon was a Maryland horse. It was 2-time Horse of the Year. Now right here I have Chaladon's a golf course up in Mount Airy. So I have the golf course thing too. But a friend of mine who's a big-time collector got these from the original trainer of Chaladon, and he had a series of other horseshoes as well. So he made a trade for that. I made a trade. I remember I traded him an 1884 owner's ticket to get into a season ticket for Pimlico, which I thought was a pretty good trade. I would love to have had that old ticket still. It was very colorful, very ornate, and it belonged to George Abel, who was the founder of the Sun Papers. So I made that trade, and it was a multi-trade, lots of things, but I got Shaladon's horseshoes, and to me, they're one of my favorite things. 1939. There's an actual picture over here of Shaladon winning the Preakness in 1939. So lots of various things. All right. After I've just showed you some of the programs and some of the specifics of the programs, Kevin asked me could I pull out some of the other things. A lot of my collection is very extensive, and particularly in glasses, which take up a lot of room. I had them on display, but we've refinished our basement, so the glasses are currently on storage. I have all the glasses from the Derby back to the 40s, and all the glasses from the Preakness, which began in 1973, and they're just one aspect of what I collect. So he asked me if I, in addition to the programs, which I'm very proud of to have more programs than anybody else, he asked me if I'd pull out some random things to show some of the diversity of the collection that I've been putting together for the last 45 years. So I laid them on my kitchen table, and my wife will be furious if she gets home before I get to put them away, but I'm going to show you some of these very unique and one-of-a-kind things from the history of Pimlico. I'll start with one of my favorite things over here. This is a cowboy hat that was worn by Cowboy Jack Cornell. They call him Cowboy Jack Cornell. And in 1982, he rode he was on a Lomas ruler, and he's actually got a Lomas ruler on the button. And I added his jockey card there. That wasn't part of the hat, but he wore it in the winner's circle. So I have a couple different pictures of him with the hat in the winner's circle. One with Miss Preakness and the governor at the time. I think his name was Hughes at the time. And anyway, there's some pictures of Cowboy Jack Cornell and the famous hat.
How did you get the hat?
How did I get the hat?
And when?
I've met a few other collectors along the way, and they want something I have that I might have two of, and I'll gladly trade them up for something that they have. This hat was put in an auction by Larry Beck, the Trophy King, ended up buying it. And funny thing is, Larry Beck, the Trophy King, is buried up in Delaney Valley Gardens, about 100 feet from where my parents are buried at Delaney Valley Gardens. So I walk by him every now and then. I say, hey, I got your hat. But anyway, my friend got it from him. I know he paid $500 for the hat. And my friend sold it to me for about $200. So I thought it was a good deal. It was part of a trade. So he got something, and I got a very rare piece of Preakness, authentic Preakness memorabilia, which to me is the favorite thing. We can just jump through. Let me show you some other things. Before I jump into the pins, I'll just show you. Back in the early days before television was even taking off, and I think this is 1949, 1950, the Pimlico was on a television advertisement, like a TV guide. And there weren't even many TVs, much less a TV guide. And to have the Pimlico as one of the first events to be filmed nationally. So I have the TV guide from there. I'll go back to the paper in a minute and show you some things. But this is one of my, collections that, so many of my collections are just, I'm the only one I know that really collects them. But back in the 50s, and even prior to that, they've always given the Maryland Jockey Club members and the famous logo of the Maryland Jockey Club seal with the saddle, the horseshoe, the stirrups, and the whip. And it's the oldest sports logo in the United States of America, is the Maryland Jockey Club symbol. So they made very ornate pins with, and they belong to, they would give out one each year to a member and to a guest. And it's funny, if you go back and look at the old pins from the 50s, they considered the guest to be a lady, because I guess at that time, the members of the Jockey Club were only men. So the guest was a man, and then it was lady. Then they changed it to guest and member and guest. So the member was a man, and the guest was a lady back in the old days. So some of these pins say lady on them. And I have a complete collection from, I don't know when they really started. I have a 1953 guest and a 1955 guest. And then I have a 1956 guest and member. And I'm only missing about 4 of them to go all the way up to like 1987 guest and member. So that's some pins, and there's other types of pins. There were pins where they gave them out for the seats, like you get a clubhouse ticket pin, clubhouse pin, or clubhouse terrace pin, or a box seat pin. And so each pin said box or CH, and there's about 150 of those pins going back to 1950. And I have a lot of them too, but they're not in this video. But some other pins, the officials would actually get a pin. So like a lot of the series of collectibles from Pimlico, they weren't really collectibles. They were just how they did business. And an official got a pin, and they started, and they kind of kept up with that for 15 years, and then they stopped it. So I don't know of any older pins or any younger pins, but a lot of the pins don't have years on them at all. So these are all the different officials pins I picked up over the years. So just have a lot of random things. I'm going to quickly go through some of these random things. This is a photograph of Bill Hartack. And right off the bat, Kevin may know which horses he rode, but he was one of the top riders in the country. And it just, if you look closely, I found after I bought the picture that he's actually signed the picture. So I bought that somewhere along the way. I have press passes. I have induction in the Racing Hall of Fame the year Steve Coughlin was induced, and he wrote to Kevin Steve Coughlin on there. I have just, here's a nice booklet, and I'm going to show you something I just showed Kevin. This booklet was put out on Preakness Day in 1924. And if you go in it, say it's 1924. But if you look on page 6, they talk about Maryland Jockey Club member badge that's 100 years old. So this book is 100 years old, and it talks about another pin that's 100 years old and has an actual drawing of that pin. So the Maryland Jockey Club, don't recall right now when it started, but it's one of the oldest racing associations, and like I said, the logo is the oldest sports logo in the country. Some other things: Pimlico was well known for its horses, and some of the whiskeys took advantage of that. So I have a few different whiskey labels for Pimlico brand whiskeys. Bring them up. So I'll show you Pimlico brand whiskeys. About in the 80s, they came out with some collector's books, and in one of these books, I'm mentioned as a contributor to one of the books because I met a man in Kentucky who wrote one of these books, and he wanted Preakness glasses, so I'd send him Preakness glasses, and he'd send me Derby glasses, and we traded. I traded for all my Derby glasses. I happen to have a newspaper here from, I know it's early 1800s, 1872. Pimlico was only 2 years old at the time, but it talks about the races at Pimlico, the Baltimore races, and the Dixie Stakes, which I think is now called the Dixie Handicap.
Actually, they changed it back now to dinner party stakes because
Oh,
of
they
the connotation of Dixie. So dinner party stakes was actually what Preakness wound up winning.
Okay, so
that was the race that he was.
A quick telling of where the name Preakness came from. I mean, Kevin's probably told you on some of his other blogs, but in 1870, when Pimlico just opened, the very first stakes race they had was called the Dinner Party Stakes. And the way that stakes race worked was all the people would run in their horses, and whoever won had to buy dinner for all the losers. So it was kind of a double-edged sword. To win, you had to pay for dinner for all the losers. So it was called the Dinner Party Stakes, and the horse named Preakness won the Dinner Party Stakes. And so Preakness, there was a town in New Jersey called Preakness, and the name came from an Indian name, Preakness, Prequali or something like that. It meant, I forget what it meant. But anyway, that's how Preakness came. Preakness ended up getting shipped back to France and kicked his owner one day and was put down for hurting his owner. So that was the end of Preakness, but not the end of the Preakness Stakes, thank goodness.
And Bill Hartack, one of his best horses was the Great Northern Dancer, the Canadian horse. they came down. He was buried. He was a sire here in Maryland, and then when he died, the Canadians came down and took his body back to Canada.
Yeah, so all the stories go through my mind, but there's so many of them that it does get confusing. Every year, they're 3-year-olds, so every year is a whole new set of names to remember, a whole new set of jockeys, trainers, owners, and I love to pick up authentic pieces from along the way. There's other things in here, hundreds of other things. Press books. Every year they give the press people a book to learn and study and I have 20 or 30 of these things along the way. Lots of signatures. Thanks in big part to Kevin, because his name's Kevin. He got people to sign it, Kevin. And then this is a postcard. We just looked up exactly what year this was run. But in 1877, Congress adjourned so that this famous race of 3 horses, Tenbrook, Tom Ogletree, and Parole, and they were 2 horses that were the best horses in the country, and they were expected to win, and unexpectedly the horse that was the least favorite won the race. And so on the marquee of Pimlico to this day, in great big bronze statue, but inlay or whatever you want to call it, depicting this race. And this is an actual postcard from 1877 showing the one of the horses in that race, because back then that was the national thing to do. And you know, there's just pretty stake paintings, and some of these are they're not hand painted, but they're hand colored. Some of these entry booklets from the 20s and 30s. Really hard to find old things, but every time I've ever found one, I kind of go out on a limb and try and get it, especially if it's a program or something like that. So that kind of is a brief going over of a small portion of my collection, but some of the top items in my collections. So thanks, Kevin, for having me do this. Thanks.